I might not need this. I'm pretty loud.
You can always just turn it off.
Hello, I'm EJ Bradford. I've been the assistant director over at the Tinker Homestead and Farm Museum and Tinker Nature Park for 11 years. Edie is my research assistant. You've been with us for 4 years. Oh my God, I'm so old. We are going to talk a little bit about how the Tinker Homestead came to be, the history of the family, and sort of the changes that it's went through, both with the family and when it came into our possession, the town of Henrietta and the Friends of Tinker Nature Park Conservancy. Show of hands, who's been to Tinker before? Yeah,
Maybe.
That's about right. It is a very accessible, right down the road, flat walking paths. They're ADA accessible. You can get your walkers, your canes, if you have strollers for your grandkids. Very easy. I see somebody take their jogging stroller there every day. She is a machine. Oh my gosh. Very flat. We maintain the trails. We are putting down mulch every season, and we try our best to stay on top of any damage. We're very proud of being one of the most accessible parks in the county that is also a nature park. We're free and open to the public. We will always be free and open to the public. That is part of the Friends of Tinker Nature Park Conservancy, as well as the trust that was left to us by the Tinker family. So all of our events are always free. There's no admission cost. Any programs we do are completely donation based. And yeah, so we'll get right into it. The Tinker Homestead and Farm Museum. Edie's going to be pressing my buttons for me. Go ahead. The Tinker Homestead and Farm Museum is not just a frozen moment in time. The house, as it currently is staged for the third generation of the family that lived there. But since it spans almost 2 centuries, buildings were constructed, enlarged, repurposed, modernized, demolished, restored, and reinterpreted. And as you walk along the paths, you'll see evidence of this. There are cobblestone waste piles that are kind of piled up along the trails. There's farm equipment that's been discarded. We're having somebody get the beat going. And we're going to kind of show some of these renovation photos and discuss kind of along the way just how massive this project was. During a short period of the homestead's life, it was empty, and there was severe water damage. An entire roof had to be redone, and then extensive interior renovations were done. Here's a brief kind of timeline of the family. This is not extensive. The family tree that we have posted in the house, the family tree that we distribute to the public, we don't list every member of the family. As you can see, back to the 2nd generation, there were 8 family living children. We would start sharing a lot of public information of a lot of cousins if we did this. So the family tree that we publish and the family tree that we distribute follows the direct lineage that lived in the house. There are Tinkers everywhere. We've got Tinkers in Connecticut. We've got Tinkers in Pennsylvania. We have Tinkers in Florida. But this is the family tree that we focus on, and it's pretty unusual that one house was able to stay in one family for 6 generations, especially in this part of the world. 1812, James and Rebecca, already married, already had 6 kids. They came over from Connecticut and settled here in the Genesee country. By 1828, after the building of the Erie Canal, the opening of the Erie Canal, they had accrued enough wealth that they were able to build a permanent living structure. That's the cobblestone house that everybody knows and loves. Later on, after they were shifting into profitable farming, they focused on wheat, sheep, household production, textiles, things like that. And then again, another shift in their focus, started doing barns, expansion of the kitchen, another shift, dairy, when they started mechanizing everything. The dairy production just took off. The farm grew to over 300 acres, and we see a huge increase in the output of what they were able to produce. Finally, after Glenn Tinker retires and no longer wants to maintain his massive dairy farm, we see the transition from the private farmstead to the public museum. His wife Louise and her daughter Carol are the two that we can thank for working together with the town of Henrietta to create the Tinker Homestead and the Tinker Nature Park. If I'm going too fast, just wave a hand or something. This is my job, and I can go on about Tinker for a long time. So in 1812, what was there before the Tinkers were there? They had purchased a parcel of land through Wadsworth, the Phelps Gorham purchase. Wadsworth was a land agent. If anybody's familiar with Geneseo or the Holland Land Office out in Batavia, thank you, Edie, for putting the word in my head. Wadsworth was originally from the Connecticut area, and so when he started selling plots of land for the Phelps Gorham purchase, he was doing a lot of advertising out in Connecticut. That is how the Tinker family, James Tinker, heard about this area, and that's when he transitioned over. Part of that package, part of that purchase they made included 40 acres of pre-cleared land and a pre-built log cabin. So they didn't come here and immediately have to start hewing all of the old growth forest that was already in the Genesee country area, the beech trees, the maple trees, the walnut trees. No, they were able to purchase something that was almost already established. There was one log cabin already on this site, close to where Calkins Road already is. It's been expanded in the middle of the 19th century, mid-century. But that's roughly where the original cabin was, and they actually had a squatter that they had to kick off the land when they got there, because who's gonna know? Who's gonna know that you're camping out on somebody's land until you actually get there and you find them? Yeah. If only we could do that today. The way the housing crisis is, oof. I don't want to pay my mortgage anymore. So they had a cabin here. They had a cabin about a half a mile down to the east and about half a mile to the west. And so all 8 children, plus the 2 parents, were kind of spread out amongst the 3 cabins. They didn't have all 10 of them in one room, luckily. The older boys probably were off in one cabin, and so they were able to distribute the family. 2 more children, I said 8 children, 6 came from Connecticut, 2 more were born in this cabin, and then by the time construction began in 1828, several of the older girls that had come from Connecticut were already married off. So so they never even got to live in this beautiful house. The older boys stayed in the log cabins and did not end up living in the house either until they were retired and done with farming. This house was made primarily with logs that were freshly hewn from the surrounding forest, not from repurposed log cabin tinders. And then as they plowed and farmed, they dug up field cobbles. So a cobblestone is a beautiful rock about the size of your hand. Everybody knows that. We're from Rochester. The tinkers would usually have the kids do this. They'd sort them for size and color. The nicest ones are on the front of the house, and then the back is a little bit more mismatched. A fun fact about the Tinker house is that we have a geode on the front of our house, right under that bottom right window. In this photo, it's kind of hidden by a hedge, but if you come to Tinker, we've ripped out all those hedges and we've put in a bunch of perennial gardens, and you can see the geode now. And it's obviously selected to be at eye height, so when you come through, you can see it. They were living in it. They were living in this house. So as you live in your house, you're gonna change your house, you're gonna update your house, and the Tinkers did that as well. The kitchens changed. They had a large hearth in the basement that they eventually didn't use as often anymore. And in the late 1800s, 1890s, Grace Ann, our second generation, one of the oldest daughters who stayed in the house, she was almost exclusively only cooking on the smaller hearth in the upstairs. And when she set fire to the hearth and to two adjoining doors on either side of the hearth, she finally agreed to install a coal stove in the summer kitchen addition, which was added onto the back of the house. It eventually got closed in behind, it eventually got closed in and turned into an in-law suite. The cistern got covered, got encased. It was no longer a pit that animals could fall in, that children might climb on top of the board and fall to their doom. Our cistern got a nice steel cap on it. And eventually, throughout the 20th century, the 1900s, plumbing, electricity, HVAC, and the living spaces all changed. Different generations use the different rooms for different reasons. The way we have this house staged right now, we have one of the older grandparents living on the first floor, and other generations use that as a kitchen. 1950s avocado green kitchen, which that is what we have right here. You can just see the silhouette of what would have been a mirror and the cabinets below it. That was all ripped out to make it back to what it originally was a small living space. And obviously now, more recently, we've adapted a powder room that had been added in 1950. We've ripped out and turned it into a closet space. Small changes like that. The ice house, which is right over here, is now a massive archive space that, fingers crossed, I'll be able to get some better lighting and some better HVAC in. And we have quite a bit of public interpretation signs along with some rotating exhibits now. Speaking of the cistern, they had a pre-dug well that was part of their, package that they bought, and one of their modern improvements in about 1910 was enclosing it with a metal cap and kind of making it more fall-proof. They also did a connection to it to allow the water to be pumped to that summer kitchen. And that was another massive improvement, living, lifestyle improvement. They did not get running water until about 1940. So they were living without running water, without indoor plumbing until about 1940. They were relying on this cistern and the infamous outhouse. Later, up until about the mid-2010s, about 2010, they maintained a kitchen garden. And it's not what we think of as like a little raised bed about the size of this table or something. It was a massive plot. This had to be big enough to have all your cucumbers, all your tomatoes, everything you would need for the entire family, plus any hired help you had, plus some extra, just in case, for the entire year. So this massive plot was about, it's about 70 by 70 feet. It's massive. You can see just in the back, the just tippy top of the roof of the nature center, just as it's starting to be built, and the time stamp is 2001. John Aldrich and his wife Carol Tinker were still maintaining a kitchen garden on the Tinker Homestead property up until they left. They were able to grow pretty much everything they needed just for personal consumption, besides the more industrial crops that they grew for, grains for their cows, etc. Now, we're getting into the historic structures of the complex now. We lost a few, and if I had my way, I would be doing a whole Genesee Country Village thing, and I'd be going off and finding them and moving them down Calkins Road, but I don't have $3 billion, so we'll see. Before the cobblestone was even built, our English threshing barn was the first permanent structure. And it is right there. It lasted on the farm, and it was used on the farm until Calkins Road was expanded. You can see here in 1953, Calkins Road is still a dirt road, even until 1953. There's no suburban spread. They have no neighbors around them, and they are the only house around for quite some distance. So we lost that English threshing barn when that expansion happened. Then, as well as the English threshing barn, we lost the silo behind it and the corn crib just to the north of the silo. If anybody is familiar with the property, you can still see the footprint of the silo and the corn crib right near where our parking lot entrance is. It's a nice flat area. So if you're ever curious, you can kind of walk out and see it. Wheat was a massive crop in the early 1800s. And this part of the state, that was our bread and butter. We're called Flower City for a reason. And the Tinkers were one of many producers that would grow wheat and we'd ship it. It'd get milled in Rochester and it went international. Erie Canal was able to improve the transportation. Our markets went even further, and the Tinkers were one of those families that were able to make the massive leap to commercial production. Let's point out the chicken coop, because we're gonna be talking about that soon. Our chicken coop was massive. You can see it compared to the house. It's about 60 feet long, about 20 feet wide. It only housed chickens for about 15 years, and then was immediately turned into storage. And if you know anything about farming and people who are thrifty, you're not gonna buy extra sheds or anything if you've got a big empty chicken coop, right? They just kept cutting new doors into it and improvising, making it adapt to their needs. So our chicken coop was here in 1953. It was built around 1920, and it was still standing up until about 2010, 2015. It wasn't collapsing under its own weight because of the Tinkers and the way they kind of adapted that structure to their needs. They cut holes into it, they cut doors into it, they installed kind of insane shelving systems into it that kind of pulled the walls down, but it was their way of utilizing these structures. As wheat declined, due to the wheat midge, the competition from other farms, and these changing markets that are now expanding, not just from across the Atlantic, but now we're also expanding westward. New York agriculture changed, and the Tinkers diversified from wheat to hogs, to corn, potatoes, massive apple orchard. Their apple orchard was about 15 acres of just apples. Again, if you're familiar with the property, it stretches from the house to the opposite side of the park. If you are a fan of skiing or snowshoeing, you can snowshoe straight through some ancient apple trees that are about 100 years old that you wouldn't have access to normally. The buildings changed with the farms, like we discussed with the chicken coop. Structures that once served one crop or animal were repeatedly altered for new uses. That chicken coop, our horse barn, ended up being converted into a cow barn. Our sheep and livestock barn originally was this small structure on the westernmost side of the property, had a much smaller footprint. And so later, when they needed much more space for the cows, the larger horse barn got converted to accommodate for more cows. However, this beautiful little sheep barn, built in 1860, it was built perpendicular to the other barns, so the sheep had this cute little paddock area that they could just kind of hang out in and be protected from the wind. We also have a large stretch of wetland in the middle of our kind of core 70 acres that is ungrazable. The cows couldn't get down in there because of poison hemlock, because of blue flag iris. The cows couldn't graze it. However, the sheep could. It could be timbered with difficulty because it was so wet. So it's difficult for wagons to get in there. So we have this core section throughout property that has some very old growth that was unusable except for sheep grazing. We had 150 sheep at our peak sheep era, producing 600 pounds of wool. And we have the walking wheels, we've got all the accoutrement in our historic barn, so we can discuss this with our visitors and talk about all the tools that you need to have sheep. It's not just kind of hanging out and solving murders, right? Is that the new movie that came out, the Sheep Detectives? But this is our barn. Our livestock barn was being altered. We needed to, in the 1950s, after World War I, they needed to be able to house more grain. They lost a silo. A silo would have been nice. So they installed bays to house grain. They, oh my goodness. And they changed the footprint around so it was easier for them to access the different functions of the barn. The dairy fittings were removed, parts of the building were adapted. So where you would expect to see sort of stalls are completely gone. And now it is an open footprint. And instead of one tall silo, they have now just one huge open area. And we use it for tractor storage. If you want to come and see my collection of beautiful Alice Chalmers and vintage John Deeres. This is our horse barn. 1880, it's a kit barn. Very likely from Sears. Ordered it through the mail. Came on a big flat wagon. They put it together in pieces. Originally had 8 horse stalls. You can just see behind the flagpole some of the windows for their little noses. And they didn't have a ton of horses, but they needed horses for horse-drawn carriages, farm work, all of that. Being sort of in the middle of the complex reflects the fact that this farm was organized around the animal labor. They needed to be able to get access to their horses right away, first thing in the morning. Check on them, be near them, be able to address any concerns. This garage door is a later modification made by the Tinkers about 1970. They converted that barn into storage for their RV. We have since changed that, and we have now added the earthen ramp that many of these 1880 barns are known for, and we have enclosed it and kind of brought back the floor space that had been altered to allow cows to be in there, and we have reconverted it back to a horse barn. Here's a photo of Glenn showing off his hollyhocks next to his barn. (1955) stalls on the flooring on the west side were removed to accommodate the heifers, and obviously since they didn't need horses anymore, they got rid of the horse barn. Because of the weight of the cows and the weight of the RVs, there was another sort of issue. As we were beginning the transformation from family home to historic preservation, we began to also address some of these concerns that maybe the family hadn't needed to prioritize because that wasn't the focus. Their focus was utilizing what they had, right? We wanted to focus on preserving the barn as it should have been versus the 1970s garage that it had become. It began sinking. So you can sort of see in the top picture how the barn is sort of skirting out and the timbers are kind of falling down into the pavement. And you can see in this picture to the left where the foundation had to be redug out, drainage had to be added, and the barn had to be lifted back up. Crawling under there was disgusting. However, we have a display case in the barn now with all the goodies that were found. It includes bones, nails, broken pottery, lots of exciting things. Horseshoes, ox shoes. So if you want to know what it's like to crawl under a 1880s barn, we have people who can answer those questions for you. We have these beautiful demonstration gardens that show off kitchen herbs, perennials, New York State perennials, flowering shrubs, all sorts of things. I like to joke that these demonstration gardens are so beautiful because they are growing out of, excuse my French, hog shit. The area is now the demonstration gardens, but this used to be a giant hog pen. And in a lot of our agricultural censuses that we have found, the Tinkers raised hogs from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, and they were producing hundreds of pounds of pork and bacon and pork products. They were selling whole hogs, they were selling hog products, and this was something that we were not expecting to find during our research. And it's one of those things that when you start to dig, you can be pleasantly surprised. We've talked about the chicken coop, 64 by 16, 100 dozen eggs. It also housed ducks, geese, and turkeys at different times, and it was very briefly a chicken coop, but 100 dozen eggs, man. It did not last long. It was mostly a shed. Ultimately demolished in 2013, and the absence is the biggest part that we want to focus on, because rebuilding the chicken coop or reproducing the chicken coop, maybe in a smaller scale, is going to be our next large project for the Friends of Tinker Nature Park. We are working with several groups. Barrow Architects has helped us kind of plan out a good reproduction. The Southeast Area Coalition has also been working with us. So we are trying to not necessarily repeat everything, but we want to also be authentic to the story. The Tinkers used it briefly as a chicken coop, but it was mostly a storage shed. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to look like a chicken coop, but we're going to use it as a storage shed. It's going to mostly be used for our beautiful volunteers who work on the demonstration gardens. There are pictures of the outhouse with the corn crib. Our corn crib is a brief thing. Again, we're probably just going to put signage up for our corn crib, and it represents the infrastructure required for all of our livestock. We lost that as well during the expansion of Calkins Road. Plans are in place to probably put up signage. If we have a walking tour, a self-guided walking tour right now, but right now that's probably all we'll do. Silo, we've touched on that already. The difference with this one was that it was glazed tile. And every once in a while when we're doing excavations, when Monroe County Water Authority comes and yells at me because there's a leaky pipe from the irrigation system that's been buried for 50 years, glazed tile appears, like when you're digging, and it's from this silo and where it was demolished. And that is also been something we've been really curious about, either including signage or doing a small display. And how do we do that authentically? We want to represent that they had such a massive livestock operation that they needed both a corn crib and a silo. But one of those challenges of having a museum and trying to be authentic. Our tractor shed is something that we have recently finished phase 3 of getting it lit. It's almost safe enough for general public to kind of walk through, and we are now getting into phase 4 of signage, interpretation, that sort of thing. Our tractor shed stored tractors. It's concrete, wood frame, construction, contrast with the other timber barns. When you come into the park, it's the first thing you see right on your left. We have actually sort of masked it with some pines because it's a very stark difference, but it's part of the Tinker history. We're not going to get rid of it just because it's not Victorian. And it's very useful. We utilize it for our general park maintenance. The tractor is important. The tractor barn is important because it helps us document the change from horse barn to tractors to equipment storage. This isn't just a Victorian house museum. It's not just a nature park. It's also documenting how American life has changed, how the land has changed. So we are working on sharing that and being authentic to the Tinker story. We're not just a snapshot of life. So as it transitioned to equipment storage, we transitioned it to equipment storage. We are trying to maintain that integrity. The barn interior storage needs, the fuel infrastructure, all these things we try to keep in mind and keep an authentic interpretation. We've lost our threshing barn. A metal pole barn was erected to replace its storage function. We have some oral histories from Louise and from Carol, who have told us that some timbers from the older barn were reportedly reused, so we haven't necessarily lost everything. But we can sort of think about, again, do we replace it? Do we put up signage? How do we interpret that? Do we just do talks like this, talk about it, let people know we had a barn, it's not there anymore? I also like to use these photos. That photo, that aerial view, is from 1953. These photos, harvesting wheat, are from 1970. And look at all the houses that just popped up. That road is called Glen Acre Drive, named after Glenn Tinker, because he sold the land to developers. He started downsizing his farm, and decided it's time for some neighbors. We can see with the 1973 pole barn that it's also belonging to that agricultural era where we're losing the timber barns. We have that concrete tractor barn, we have this metal pole barn. We're losing that wheat production, and we need to start having fireproof ways to store internal combustion engines. There's my outhouse. The outhouse, famously, is not a Tinker outhouse. Our Tinker outhouse is lost. There was a renovation, a construction that built on an in-law suite on the back of the house. We lost our outhouse. This outhouse is from the McNall farm. If anybody has been in Henrietta, there's that beautiful Ward Science building. It's got like an elephant statue. You go over the thruway and it's right on West Henrietta Road. And that was the McNall farm. Ward Science bought it, tore down the farm, and one of our previous curators said, oh my gosh, they have an outhouse that is about the same year and the same size as the Tinker outhouse. So we were able to save it. We were able to renovate it, and it is now on the property, roughly in the right spot. However, our outhouse actually was touching the house, and there was a hallway after that summer kitchen was added on, so you could walk straight through the house, right to the outhouse, and you didn't have to go outside. Very convenient, very nice. I like being able to show people that we have 2 seats. It's great. Our outhouse, the Tinker outhouse, probably also had 2 seats. It's not so you can hold hands with your honey. It's not so you can prevent a kid from falling in. That's what chamber pots are for. It's to distribute the waste. So like on Tuesday, you sit on the left side. On Wednesday, you sit on the right side. Mix it up. It's to prevent mounds, everybody. Yeah. And then, you can deal with it later. We are looking into several different avenues to also replace our missing structure, like our chicken coop and things like that, in a similar way. This one we could just put in the back of a truck. So, this is it now. It got new shingles, it got a new paint job. We were able to, it looks nice, right? Sue? Tell me my outhouse looks nice. You can open it, you can look inside. It's got a little glass window. It's a nice little outhouse. It's useful. We can talk about how museums exist to restore artifacts, and we use it interpretively. It's a beautiful little display. I see people take prom photos in front of it. Yeah.
Depends on your date.
I guess it depends on your date, but the Town Historians Museum in Henrietta is actually on our property. We have the space available, so we share. We're nice like that. The official Town of Henrietta Museum is an outbuilding that the Tinkers had, and it was a garage. It was a garage built in 1975. It was the historian's office first, before it was the historian's museum. They moved out and turned it into the museum. And this is a cute little family photo of the Tinkers in the museum. I cannot name everybody because there are some cousins. But we've got Glenn here in the middle. And we've got Carol at the end. And we've got, oh my goodness, Glenn's coworker? That's his farmhand. And then a random dog for everybody. We have tried to get cousins to come up and identify people in the photos, and they said no. Who would do that? So Google Jackie Lima, she's an artist in Delaware, and yell at her and tell her to come back to Tinker and identify photos for me. Again, we are reusing these buildings and structures and trying to maintain their integrity. The town museum looks like a garage, except now instead of a garage door, we've closed it in and it's got a real door. I guess it's a door. Here's our ice house. Our ice house is now archive space. That is their ice house. They would have been getting blocks of ice from Hemlock or Honeyway delivered. They would have stacked them up in there. And look how convenient that is. That is the old front of the town museum. That has since rotted away and we did not replace it. They have a different door now, and then that is the back of the cobblestone. We originally presented multiple generations because multiple generations lived in this house. We no longer do that. It is very confusing for children. Adults, you get it. You get it just fine. However, when I get a group of second graders in or a group of fourth graders in, and I take them through and all of a sudden they go from an 1830, 1840 kitchen, and then upstairs is a 1970s orange and brown bedroom, the kids don't get it. So that was a decision that took about a year to kind of come to an agreement. And we settled on one generation, the primary generation that had multiple, I'm gonna say generation again, generations living with it, and also had kind of the longest running impact in the house. Yeah. Carol. We have oral history from Carol. We have oral history from her mother. And we have been able to use a lot of her photos and her father's photos for kind of figuring out how the house should be displayed, how things should sort of be arranged. And Carol sold the property and gifted the property. There was a sale and a gift to the town of Henrietta. But part of her agreement was also that she remain on the property.
Oh.
So she didn't actually leave until about 2010. She was there from about 1994 to about 2010. And that was extremely helpful. She recently passed away in 2020, but she was a great resource for us to be able to identify things, to be able to ask, like, is this quilt your quilt, or was it this quilt gifted to you guys? Things like that. Carol was fantastic. So she's dearly missed. She was a firecracker. Loved her very much. I did not get enough time with her. So what survives today and what we focus on, we can see early settlement. We can see evidence of the commercial wheat production, the sheep, the diversification of the livestock, evidence of the dairy farming, the mechanization, the domestic modernization, suburban development. We focused on the historic preservation and the museum interpretation. And these are all the things we focus on at Tinker. It's not just a farm museum. It's not just a Victorian house museum. It's not just a nature center. We have a lot of layers to our stinky little onion. And it's a lot. But we try really hard to sort of focus and maintain sort of the loyalty and scope to Tinker, again, as a multi-generational American family. These are the things we are going to focus on, like in the future, where our earlier driveways are is a big one. That beautiful magnolia tree that's in bloom. Just to the east of it, kind of running alongside the house, that's where our original driveway was. And we think there would have been a carriage house, but Carol has no recollection of it, and we have no primary source documents corroborating, so they might not have had a carriage house. They had multiple carriages. We are looking at our English threshing barn, our original chicken coop. So these are kind of points of focus for our future planning. How are we going to educate, interpret, preserve these missing pieces of the history and the property? The homestead and the farm buildings survived because they changed. That is a very important lesson to take away, and an important thing that I reiterate in my historical interpretation. This farm didn't exist so long because it just stood solemnly on the top of the hill. They were able to adapt and overcome multiple world wars, Great Depression. They were able to get through, the wheat blight. They were able to get through personal conflict, all of that, because they were able to figure out how to change. Their rooms changed function. Their barns changed. Their adaptation is not separate from the site's history. It's central to the site itself. And we focus on that, and we like to reiterate that to people. That is an inherent part of human nature, is to adapt to change. And though it is nostalgic, and it is, wonderful to look back and be like, look at how wonderful things used to be, you also have to give credit to the fact that this family has been here because they were able to adapt and change. These are my sources. That is the walking tour you can take if you want to come to Tinker and you don't want to talk to me anymore. You can just go on a tour yourself. It's on theclio.com. Barrowish Associates. They are architects who have done multiple site assessments for us and are probably sick of my phone calls. We have a docent packet, multiple newspaper articles, Carol Tinker's oral history, and research done by Edie, and photographs from the Tinker archives. And I have some slides with extra bonus pictures of how terrible the outhouse roof was, some more pictures of our 1950s kitchen, and the state it was in while we were working on renovating it, how the semi-trucks were able to get into the barn to get the grain instead of, attaching to a silo. They had to finagle their way in. Crazy. I grew up in farm country, so this was very interesting for me. The massive fields of hay. Now that's a parking lot and a wildflower meadow. This is how the kitchen is now sort of staged. That red's gone, but we still have this beautiful clock. This is an 1830 clock, probably came with them from Connecticut. Horse barn, foundation adjustment. Very common horse barn. You'll see this style of horse barn all throughout Western New York, again, because it's a kit barn. So the renovations of the house happened concurrently with the building of the nature park, which is a whole nother talk. But they had to build boardwalks to get over the wet areas of this beautiful wetland. And they dug a pond. There were talks to name it after Carol's mother, call it Lake Louise. It is unnamed. The trail system was extensive and very difficult to get through this sort of wet, marshy area, again, because they weren't utilizing it. They built pavilions and a nature center. Henry Hansen, he donated quite a bit of money to the cause because he was excited about the possibility of having a nature park in Henrietta. Nature Center was actually built in 2 halves. That's why it has dividing in there. Henry Hansen, who saw when the first half was completed, decided it wasn't big enough. All of these white pines did not survive because they are not native to Henrietta. I don't know how the soil is out here in Gates, but in Henrietta it is thick, heavy clay, and white pines do not like it. We have lots of beautiful other trees at Tinker, but when they wanted to replant a lot of places that had been farmed, they just chose some silly trees. Yeah. We've got a covered amphitheater that was constructed. They used to have the split rail fence everywhere. That has since been removed. There was this idea to make the park look like a farm still, instead of making it look like a open, beautiful park to walk around in. And that was a design decision that eventually just was not kept. All right, so that is it. If anybody has any questions, I talked a lot.
Are you still doing the Civil War reenactment?
No, we are no longer doing the Civil War reenactment. And I can elaborate further if you would like.
Yeah.
It was a very expensive program, and it was a logistical nightmare, I guess I should say. So actually, this is a good, can you go, oh no, right here, this picture. So this is called Country Lane. The labyrinth is right here, the nature center is right there. All down Country Lane is where the encampment would happen. And this is a broad generalization. This is not true to all Civil War reenactors. However, the groups that consistently came to Tinker because they were close by were very poorly behaved.
No.
And it was a very difficult decision for us, but at the same time it was easy. It was difficult because we knew it was important to the public, and we knew it was a program that was educational, and we knew that people enjoyed it, and we knew that it's educational and relevant. However, at around the 11th annual, we started reaching out, trying to get different people to come. We started branching out, we started going into talks with other smaller reenactments around us, and they were all having the same issues. So we found out it wasn't a tinker issue, it was a people issue. And so we lasted 4 more years. We got to the 15th annual one, and it wasn't just us, it was a whole bunch of other little ones. We all kind of banded together, and we all kind of put on our big kid pants, and we just ended it. And we let Genesee Country Village kind of become the big one. And it was very disappointing, because we kept giving people chances. It was a 3-day weekend at Tinker where I would have to like sleep at Tinker because they could not be trusted. It was not fun. Because you want people to be professional, especially because we're right in I mean, you saw how close those houses were. There were people who just, it was a weekend camping with their friends. They'd bring coolers and get drunk, and it was a whole thing. So it was a difficult decision, but we're happy that the Genesee Country Village and Museum has been able to kind of step up and become the big one for the area. We were having problems, Hamlin was having problems, Lima was having problems, so it's kind of, yeah.
The thing I liked about it was the history of medicine during the Civil War.
I know.
And a actual physician.
Fred is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
That was part of the reason why we lasted so long, was I kept getting Fred back. And at 15, year 15, Fred was like, I'm done after this, I'm retiring. And I was just like, okay, I think we can do it. I think we can finally say no. But Fred's,
He was fantastic.
I love him. He reminds me of Hawkeye from MASH, and just, yes.
What was the profession of Mr. Tinker when he lived in Connecticut? What's his financial background?
He is the son of a wealthy merchant. So he wasn't the first son. So his father was John Tinker, and John Tinker was a merchant, just buying and selling goods. And he had an older brother who got the inheritance, took over the family job. And do you want to go back to the family slide? Yeah. And as is the way, often, the oldest son will get the inheritance, and then the younger siblings either get nothing or they get cash. And it's never the same. So James Tinker was a second son and got his cash inheritance and decided, I'm going to skedaddle. It's at 1812, you know, big year for everybody. There was a embargo, a British blockade in Connecticut, and he decided to leave. He didn't want to stick around while the War of 1812 was kind of cooking over in New England. Took up farming, figured he could do it. You could do anything.
What is their nationality?
English. It's Connecticut, they're English. Yeah.
So if I wanted to come, what do I do? Go to Henrietta to Calkins Road?
Yep. We're 1585 Calkins Road.
Okay.
Go to Calkins Road, turn left. If you're coming down East Henrietta Road, turn left onto Calkins. We're right up the hill.
Okay.
However, Calkins Road is getting ripped up right now. So I recommend coming from Pinnacle, or coming from Pittsford, or flying. The house is 1585. 1525 or 1585 will both work. My research assistant just pointed that out. We do have an upcoming event. August 15th is Wild Tinker. It is our conservation program. We have a bunch of wildlife conservationists. Seneca Park Zoo is coming. Prehistoric World from Perry, New York is coming. And taco truck. I think it's a taco truck, don't quote me on that. Ice cream, music, it's really fun. There's stickers, the house will be open, I'll be there, Edie will be there. It's a great time. Yeah.